My name is Emily. I'm 25 years old. Improve your English while listening to real emotional stories. Subscribe to English Storytime now. And for as long as I can remember, there has been a missing piece in my life. I grew up in a small town, raised by two wonderful parents who loved me deeply. But they weren't my biological parents. I was adopted when I was just a few months old. They always told me the truth, gently and with love. I never felt unwanted. But deep inside, a part of me always wondered, who is she? Where is she? Does she ever think of me? When I turned 25, I decided it was time to search for answers. My parents supported me, even though I could see the worry in their eyes. After months of research, phone calls and paperwork, I found a clue. Name, place, and one overwhelming realization. My biological mother lived in a small town in the United States. I had never been outside my country. I didn't speak English. Not even a little. I knew if I wanted to meet her, to truly connect with her, I had to learn. Not just words. I had to learn a language that could carry all the feelings I had locked inside me for years. I signed up for evening classes at a community center. I remember my first day clearly. The room was cold, the chairs were uncomfortable, and my heart raced with fear. Would I ever be able to say what I needed to say? Could English give me back the pieces of myself I had lost? As the teacher greeted us with a warm smile and slow words, I realized something. Learning English wasn't just about meeting her. It was about finding myself along the way. Learning English was harder than I imagined. Every evening after work, I dragged myself to the small classroom with a notebook and a heavy heart. Our teacher, Mr. Harris, was patient and kind. He spoke slowly, repeated everything twice, and encouraged us to make mistakes. "Mistakes mean you're trying," he would say with a smile. First, everything sounded the same. Words blurred together. Grammar rules felt like puzzles with missing pieces. I could say hello and thank you, but forming real sentences felt impossible. Some nights I left class feeling proud. Other nights I cried in the car, overwhelmed by frustration. The other students seemed to pick up words faster. They laughed together, shared jokes. I sat quietly, afraid to sound foolish. I kept telling myself, "You're not doing this for a grade. You're doing this for her. For the woman who gave you life." One evening, Mr. Harris gave us a writing assignment. Introduce yourself in 5 sentences. 5 simple sentences. I stared at the blank page for almost an hour. How could I explain who I was with so few words? How could I fit my life, my search, my hope into such a small space? At home, I practiced speaking alone in my room. I talked to the mirror. I whispered to my pillow. My words were broken, my accent thick. But every syllable was a step toward her. Every awkward phrase was a bridge between 2 lives, 2 hearts. Some nights I wanted to quit. The dream felt too far. The distance too wide. But then I would close my eyes and imagine her face. I didn't know what she looked like. But I imagined her smile. Her voice. Her arms opening wide. And that was enough to make me stay. After 3 months, something amazing happened. I understood my first full conversation in English. It was simple, a woman at the bookstore asking for help, but I answered her, and she smiled like she understood me. I walked out of that store feeling taller, lighter, stronger. In class, Mr. Harris started calling on me more often. I could answer short questions without freezing. I could read small texts without feeling lost. For the first time, English felt less like a wall and more like a door. a door I was learning to open word by word. I began to dream again. I imagined sitting across from my mother, drinking coffee, telling her about my life. I imagined her proud smile when I said, "I learned this for you." I wrote down questions I wanted to ask her. Why did you give me up? Did you ever think of me? Are you happy? I promised myself I would ask them in English, with no translator between us. Only truth. But hope is a fragile thing. One evening after class, Mr. Harris gave me an envelope. "This came for you," he said. Frowned, confused. Who would send me something here? It was a letter from the agency that had helped with my adoption search. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words blurred, but the message was clear. They had found her. But she had remarried. She had a new family. And according to the agency, she wasn't sure she wanted to meet me. I sat in the empty classroom long after everyone left. The lights buzzed softly overhead. My heart felt heavy, my breath shallow. After all this effort, all this learning, all this hope. Maybe there would be no reunion. Maybe my English, my search, my dream, it was all for nothing. Or maybe it was still for me. The next few days were heavy. I went to class, but my heart wasn't there. The words floated past me, soft and distant, like raindrops on a window. Mr. Harris noticed. After class one evening, he sat beside me and asked, "Is everything okay?" Almost said yes. It's the automatic answer, isn't it? But instead, in slow, shaky English, I said, "I don't know." It wasn't perfect grammar. It wasn't fluent. But it was honest. And somehow, saying it out loud made the sadness feel a little lighter. That night, I sat by the window with a notebook on my lap. I wrote 2 lists. On one side, reasons to give up. On the other side, reasons to continue. The first list was easy. Pain, fear, rejection. The second list was harder. But when I finished, it was longer. I wanted to learn English not just for her but for me. To prove to myself that I could cross oceans, not just with a plane ticket, but with words. To build a bridge where none existed. To tell my story even if no one was listening. I closed the notebook and made a decision. I would keep learning. Not because of what I hoped to get, but because of who I was becoming. At the next class, when Mr. Harris asked us to write about our dreams, I didn't hesitate. I wrote in simple broken English. I want to speak my story. I want to find my family. I want to find myself. He read it, smiled, and said, "That's the best reason to learn a language I've ever heard." And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something even more important than finding her. It was the beginning of finding my own voice. 6 months after my first English class, I bought a plane ticket. It didn't feel real. Holding it in my hands, seeing my name, my destination, it made everything I had worked for suddenly tangible. The words I struggled to learn, the late nights, the silent tears, the whispered sentences to my pillow. They had brought me here. Mark, my adoptive father, drove me to the airport. He helped carry my bag, joked about how I should eat before the flight, and hugged me tighter than he ever had before. "No matter what you find there," he said softly, "you'll always have a home here." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I was grateful for them, my real parents. Nothing could ever change that. But I needed to do this. For myself. For the little girl who used to stare at the stars, wondering if her mother was looking at the same sky. On the plane, fear sat beside me like an old, unwanted friend. What if she didn't want to see me? What if she rejected me completely? What if my English wasn't good enough? I kept rehearsing what I would say over and over in my mind. Hello. My name is Emily. I think you're my mother. But the words felt small against the ocean of emotions inside me. When I landed, everything felt louder. The announcements, the voices, the rushing crowds. I clutched my notebook to my chest like a life jacket. I followed signs, asked strangers for help in halting English, and somehow made it to the bus that would take me to her town. Sitting by the window, I watched the city blur into countryside. Trees, houses, gas stations passed by like moments I would never get back. I wasn't just traveling to meet a person. I was traveling into a new version of myself. A version that wasn't afraid to speak, even with broken words. A version that wasn't afraid to hope, even if hope hurt. And deep down beneath the fear, something else bloomed quietly. Pride. Pride that I had come this far. Pride that I hadn't let silence win. The town was smaller than I imagined. Quiet streets, colorful houses, people who smiled at strangers. I got off the bus with my bag slung over my shoulder and my heart pounding like a drum. The agency had given me an address. A simple house with a blue door. I stood in front of it for a long time, breathing, thinking, trying not to run away. Finally, I raised my hand and knocked. Took a moment. Then the door opened. And there she was. She looked so much like me it made my knees weak. Same eyes. Same shape of the mouth. Same nervous hands clutching the door. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. For a second, English lessons, rehearsed phrases, grammar rules. All of it disappeared. All that remained was the unbearable weight of emotion between us. Finally I found my voice. Hello, I said, trembling. My name is Emily. I think you are my mother. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. She opened the door wider and stepped outside. Her hands shook as she reached for mine. I'm sorry, she whispered in broken English. I wanted better life. For you. It wasn't perfect English. It wasn't even full sentences. But I understood. I understood everything. And suddenly, it didn't matter how many words we had or didn't have. It didn't matter if we spoke fluently or clumsily. Our hearts were speaking louder than anything else. We sat on the porch for hours. She told me bits and pieces about her life, pausing often, searching for words. I told her about my parents, my childhood, my dreams. Sometimes we used gestures, sometimes we used simple words. Sometimes we just sat in silence, smiling through tears. Before I left, she hugged me tightly. And for the first time in my life, I felt what I had been searching for. Not answers, not explanations, but a connection. A bond that no distance, no language, no time could erase. As I walked back toward the bus stop, I realized something even more important. I hadn't learned English just to find her. I had learned English to find myself. To believe that I was capable of building bridges where none existed before. Maybe that's what language truly is. A bridge between souls. New emotional English stories uploaded several times a week. Subscribe to English Storytime and learn English naturally through real emotions and real life.